Welcome into another week of Palmetto Sports Daily. Julia Westerman, Kevin Bilodeau, and Teagan Brown here with you here on a Monday. We unfortunately have to start with some pretty sad news out of Columbia and got statewide impact, actually. But former Gamecock quarterback Steve Taneyhill has passed away at the age of 52. He was a legendary quarterback at South Carolina from 1992 to 1995, racked up a ton of career accolades. He set school career records in completions and passing touchdowns. He was inducted into the USC Athletics Hall of Fame in 2006. And of course, just a number of things that he accomplished in his career. He led South Carolina to their first bowl win in 1994. That was over WVU in the CarQuest Bowl. He broke the 4-season losing streak to Clemson in 1992. So got 2 wins over the Tigers in his time as a Gamecock. Just obviously, you can see it here. He was known for his iconic mullet, just a prolific figure in South Carolina football history and just South Carolina athletics in general. Of course, passing away way too young at 52 years old. So, guys, just kind of want to get your immediate reaction to this. Obviously, this is a name that most Gamecock fans know, most South Carolina, residents know. And just talking about Steve Taneyhill a little bit. Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate or underexplain the importance this guy has on the South Carolina program as a whole. Because, when you talk about, you mentioned he led them to their first bowl win as an SEC team that was a huge victory in South Carolina lore. South Carolina, once they joined the SEC in 1990, this team was an afterthought for several years after they joined the SEC. But now, Taneyhill comes in, a highly recruited quarterback. That might be one of the most iconic photos right there that we just showed in all of South Carolina history, is Taneyhill with his arms up at Clemson after, throwing a touchdown against the Tigers. But he led them to that bowl victory. That was a huge moment in South Carolina, kind of showing the rest of the SEC that this was a program that could contribute to the SEC and could be someone to be reckoned with in the SEC. And that was a big deal. And I think Taneyhill deserves a huge portion of credit for that, Teagan.
Talking about just his impact across the state, not only there in Columbia. He's somebody who has clearly had an impact on a lot of fans of South Carolina throughout the years. And he kind of displays that loyalty to college football that we don't necessarily have today with the transfer portal and with kids going from school to school. He represents a time where there was just so much commitment to your program. And you could also see after he graduated, after he left USC, just his commitment to the program still. And yeah, there's that picture that Kevin was talking about. Extremely iconic, gone way, way too young. But his impact on South Carolina, I think, is just so deep, Julia.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also a high school football coach at 2 different high schools over his career. And, he had an impact as a businessman. He worked with people here in Columbia. He had businesses in 5 Points. I believe he had businesses up in Spartanburg as well. So just a statewide impact. And, he had an impact on more people than you would think. Obviously, we're trying to work and talk to a lot of people to get some impactful messaging from the people that he impacted throughout his life. But we've already heard from head coach Dabo Sweeney out of Clemson earlier today, and he was asked about the impact that Taneyhill left, and they actually overlapped a little bit when Dabo was at Alabama, and he had a chance to talk about him a little bit earlier today.
My last game in Tuscaloosa as a senior was against South Carolina. That was my last game, and I think that was the week they had boycotted the week before or something, and then they came to Tuscaloosa, and that was my last game ever in Tuscaloosa. Had a couple catches in that game, but I just remember that, and Steve was on the team then, and then I have no idea where life's going to take you. Fast forward, I end up at Clemson, and he ends up becoming a high school coach. As an assistant, I started going out on the road recruiting for Clemson, and he was a high school coach, so I got to know him, and I really liked Steve. He was a really good guy, huge personality. Very, very good football coach, and man, I really kind of just took my breath away a little bit. But I prayed for his wife this morning because Helms asked me to, and so just prayers with all the Taneyhill family, all the South Carolina people who loved him as a player because he's one of the greats in this rivalry for sure.
Great anecdote from Dabo there. And of course, yeah, we'll have more from his former teammates, former coaches, everyone that knew Steve over the years throughout this upcoming week as we get in touch with them. But we'll have more on this episode of Palmetto Sports Daily coming up after the break. Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. Guys, bowl season got started with a bang on Saturday. The Celebration Bowl between SC State and Prairie View A&M. That thing went to 4 overtimes. Definitely one of the more interesting games that I've seen in a while, and, you know, just a wild finish for South Carolina State. And they come back to Orangeburg as the 2025 HBCU National Champions. And just an impressive showing across the board. They trailed 21-0 after the first half, and then they come back and win it 40-38 in 4 OT. And there were just a lot of really cool storylines to follow. Obviously, we'll get to the success of Chennis Berry as we talk about this, but what really stood out to me was Ryan Stubblefield coming in for an injured Billy Atkins at quarterback. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, back and forth on who the starting quarterback was going to be throughout this season. They eventually settled on Billy for, you know, the back half of the season and MEAC play. And of course, he goes down and gets injured, and Ryan Stubblefield, he came in and, you know, got the job done, which was a really full circle moment for him. He talked about it post game to Rick Henry, talking about how, you know, hey, this is something I got to do last year and we didn't get the job done. So he said he prayed before the game and said, hey, if this is something that I need to do, like, please give me the opportunity to, you know, do anything I can for the team. And they were able to get that win. You see Buddy Pugh there. He's the last one to hoist that trophy. And then, you know, you got Chennis bringing it up right there as well. So just a cool thing across the board. And guys, just want to gauge your reaction to this. I mean, it was just a really, really exciting game. Teagan?
Yeah, I mean, what a fantastic showing for Chennis Berry, especially after not being with the program for all that long, and that 21-0 lead that the other guys had. Prairie View A&M in that first half. I watched a little bit of that side of the football game, and just, you know, for a second there was like, all right, I don't know if South Carolina State can come back from this one, but, you know, great performance from them, Kevin. Super exciting to bring back to Orangeburg.
I mean, this will go down as an iconic game in South Carolina State history, maybe the most iconic game they'll ever play. And the way this one worked out, I mean, this is the kind of game where if you wrote this down as a script and handed it in as a movie, they're going to be like, come on, this is ridiculous. They get down 3 touchdowns and you bring in the backup quarterback, and then they come back and win in 4 overtime. I mean, that's just, it's not realistic, but it somehow happened here. And, you know, I was watching the game, you know, driving my kids back and forth to basketball practice, and I had to get, you know, my son's holding the phone as they're going into the second overtime, and I'm trying to keep track, and I'm trying to watch the road, and that was its own dangerous thing. But it was just, it's going to go down as an iconic game for South Carolina State, Julia.
Yeah, guys, I just want to bring this up. I did some stats records after the game, just looking at, because, you know, of course, us in Columbia, we've covered Chennis Berry for the last 4 years or 5 years rather, because he was at Benedict for 3 seasons, and then he moved on to South Carolina State for the past 2 seasons. So looking at just exactly the last 4 seasons, his final 2 seasons at Benedict and the last 2 seasons at SC State, he has a 41-8 overall record. He is a perfect 25-0 in conference play. That's in the SIAC and the MEAC. He's won 4 conference titles. He got 2 HBCU D2 national championship nods, and then they won the HBCU D1 national championship this past Saturday. So just a really impressive resume. I posted this online and the reaction to it was tremendous. I even saw people in there talking about, you know, when's the next job going to be? So that would be the question I have for you guys now is how much longer until people really, you know, start knowing what Chennis Berry is about and what he could do for, you know, a bigger program.
Well, you know,
yeah,
this
I
is
mean, he was
something we talked
somebody
about
that
last week a
Coastal
little
fans.
Teagan, you
Both
got
of you
it.
go.
Yeah. You know, this is something the Coastal fans were talking about because he was one of those names that was thrown out there with the head coaching search for Coastal. And, you know, I talked a little bit about it on this show, just saying I don't know if he was quite ready to transition to Coastal this year, even with all the success that you've pointed out there, Julia. But honestly, I think one more year at SC State, I wouldn't be surprised if next year, if the coaching carousel continues in the way that it did here in 2025, if we do see him land somewhere else, in one of those group of 5 conferences, Kevin.
I'm just more surprised that his name hasn't come up more at this point already. I thought in this coaching cycle we would have at least heard his name a couple more times than we did, because what he does now, with the transfer portal and everything else, and cycling one team in and taking his first team at SC State to the Celebration Bowl, cycling pretty much that whole team out, bringing in a whole bunch of new guys, and then getting back to the Celebration Bowl and this time winning it. I mean, it shows that's what you need in a program right now, is guys who can cycle kids in and out and still keep the program going and keep the success going. So he's definitely a name we're going to hear next coaching cycle as long as SC State keeps winning, Julia.
Well, absolutely. I mean, most of this roster was transfers. That's something he talked about all season long. But to your point, the surprising factor of not hearing his name come up as much already is a huge factor. That's something that he knows about, certainly. And he talked about that going into his press conference after the Celebration Bowl, because they do these MEAC press conference calls every Monday. You get all 6 coaches on this call. And, of course, there's some quote unquote bigger names on these calls with a couple of NFL guys at other institutions. But here's what he had to say about all of that after the bowl game.
I keep receipts now. So all through the season, we had those conference calls. Nobody wasn't asking me any questions. It was always directed to the 2 NFL guys. And I'll sit there and get 1 or 2 questions. And they get 20 or 30. So I'm going to say that. There's good football coaches that come through HBCU. We can coach.
Of course, those names, Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson. But of course, he's really cementing his legacy here. And I feel like back when we were wondering who was going to get the SC State job, I think it was pretty obvious it was going to be Chennis Berry. We remember seeing him on the sidelines at the South Carolina High School State Championship games. You kind of just knew that's where things were going while he was hanging out with Buddy Pugh. But it'll be interesting to see as this goes forth of, a lot of people really want him to stick around SC State, but I just wonder how long can a talent like Chennis Berry really get, stay there, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is how much SC State wants to keep him and how much they're willing to open up the checkbook and keep a guy like that there. Because if they can write a big enough check, I'm sure Chennis would have no trouble staying in Orangeburg. My favorite part of that, though, is, him talking about keeping receipts, which is amazing, and just picturing him sitting there on those conference calls every Monday and questions going to Michael Vick and Deshaun Jack, and you could just see him getting angrier and angrier every question he doesn't get about the Bulldogs. That's what I'm picturing. It's just him getting more and more angry as that thing goes along.
Well, he would come into our press conference, the Monday one that I would go down to every week. It was right after that phone press conference, and he would come in there and he's like, "Sorry, I'm late, guys. I'm at the end of the press conference call. I had to wait around, get through everybody else's questions before they got to me, and they had to kind of figure out and streamline all of that so that he could stay on his schedule." But it's a great thing. I would love to see him stick around here as long as he can, but he is obviously a tremendous coach and, has a long way to go in his career. He was an assistant for 26 years before he got his first head coaching opportunity at Benedict. So he's still got a ways to go and obviously has a lot more athletes to impact along the way. We've got a little bit more bowl season to talk about, though, Teagan. What's going on out in Conway?
Oh, yeah, we've got the Myrtle Beach Bowl coming up this week on Friday, an 11 a.m. kickoff, so it'll be an early day for Kennesaw State and Western Michigan. Both of these teams are conference champions, Western Michigan in the MAC, and then Kennesaw State in Conference USA. This is kind of one of the first years where Myrtle Beach, the bowl game, hasn't had a team from the Sun Belt. That's usually the tie-in. Last year we had Coastal Carolina. The year before it was Georgia Southern. But this year, it's a battle of conference champions. A couple of things to note in this one. Western Michigan has the nation's leader in tackles. That would be Nadame Tucker. He leads in sacks. He leads in tackles for loss. So a big kind of threat there for Kennesaw State to have to deal with. But both the teams are officially in Myrtle Beach today. They'll have their introductory press conference for the head coaches tonight. We'll also get a look at the trophy. But guys, obviously, neither of these teams really tied to South Carolina, so the fans that do go to the games will be a mix of both teams. But of course, if any folks in the Myrtle Beach area out there want to watch a football game, that's your chance to come to the Myrtle Beach Bowl. But that's, again, Friday at 11 a.m. We're going to have more Palmetto Sports Daily on the other side.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We move over to the NFL, and I've literally run out of things to say about the Carolina Panthers. In position to really set themselves up to take this division championship and set themselves up for a playoff run possibly over the next couple of weeks, and they somehow lose again to the New Orleans Saints. The Saints have 4 wins on the season. 2 of them are against the Panthers. This one, just a heartbreaker for Carolina. They fall 20-17 on the road yesterday, dropped to 7-7 on the season, still tied with the Bucs for first place in that division race. I guess, guys, in the long run, it doesn't really matter because there's still 2 games against the Bucs coming up, and if they take care of business in those games, then they're going to go to the postseason. But I don't know what to think of this team. I don't know what to expect out of them week to week. I get surprised by them pleasantly one week, and then I think, all right, they're going to go on this run, and let's sign Bryce Young to an extension, and let's keep him in Charlotte for the next decade. And then they come out and play a game like this, and I'm baffled by this team. I can't say it enough, Julia.
It's hard to pinpoint truly what the problem is, too, because just the manner of inconsistencies has been just across the board in so many different areas. There's not just one thing that's wrong with this team when they lose, but to get swept by the Saints, who are arguably one of the worst teams in the league this season, it's hard to watch. I mean, you watch them going down the stretch there yesterday, and it's like, okay, you let them battle back from down 17-7. They tie it up, and then just some, awful errors there to, give them the opportunity to kick that game-winning field goal. That's not what you want to see from a team that's poised and prepped to hopefully go to the postseason. And then you still have to play the Bucs those final 2 times with, the Seahawks in the middle, which, doesn't matter for the divisional race, but that's still a tough team that could kind of batter you down going into that final game of the regular season. So it's tough to watch, and you just got to wonder how they can figure out to manage and find some of that consistency, Teagan.
Yeah, I mean, the inconsistency is astounding. And, looking at this season, I don't know what to expect from them in these last games. Like Kevin said, I have no idea if we're going to see the Panthers team that somehow comes out on top and surprises me every single time, or if it's the Panthers team that lets the Saints beat them twice. I never understand this team. I should just start flipping a coin before every single game to decide if they're going to win or lose in my head, because it seems almost like that's what they do. We're going to take a quick break here. Again, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We move over to hockey and 2 amazing events at hockey games here in the state over the weekend. And starting up in Greenville on Saturday night as the team, the Swamp Rabbits, having their teddy bear toss. We had one here in Charleston last weekend with the Stingrays. Last night, or this past weekend, I should say, the Swamp Rabbits taking on Greensboro, coming away with a 4-1 victory. But it's that first goal is the one that matters. As there you see teddy bears flying onto the ice. The team was hoping for around 10,000 to be thrown onto the ice, and from the looks of it, they had to get at least close, if not go way over. This is always, wherever they do this, one of the best events in hockey for the entire season. Maybe only beaten by what we had in the Low Country yesterday, Undy Sunday, for the South Carolina Stingrays. They did their teddy bear toss last week, so yesterday it's packs of underwear being thrown onto the ice after the first goal of the game. As you see right here, Zach Funk putting one into the back of the net, and then it's just packs and packs of underwear being thrown onto the ice, which leads to all kinds of questions. And of course, the requisite delay that comes with cleaning all that stuff up. But always a good time, goes to a great cause. And congrats to the Stingrays and the Swamp Rabbits for getting those things done over the weekend.
I admit that's the first time that I have heard of an Undy Sunday event. You see the teddy bear tosses everywhere, but I like the creativity, and, it always goes to a good cause. All right, guys, it is the Christmas season. It is the holiday season. We are ramping up for everything that's to come over the next couple of weeks, and I have a pressing question for you both as we wrap up today's episode. We watch a lot of movies in this time of year. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Teagan, we'll start with you.
Well, guys, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have never, ever seen Die Hard. I have absolutely no idea what it's about. When I'm watching Christmas movies, I am watching a Muppet Christmas Carol. I have no idea. I don't know anything about it. I watch like all the classic Christmas movies, and nobody in my family has ever been like, you know what we should sit down and watch right now? Die Hard. So, Kevin, I'm going to leave, this debate up to you because I cannot debate it.
All right, Kevin,
This is the
here we go.
most disappointing thing I've ever heard. That nobody in your family ever has the idea to throw that on, because in my family, that is the tradition on Christmas Eve, is I'm putting together toys. And it took me like 6 hours to put together this Thomas the Train train track set a couple years ago. But the whole time I'm doing it, I'm watching John McClane go barefoot over glass and fly out of buildings and save Nakatomi Towers. Because yes, it is absolutely 100% a Christmas movie.
We agree.
Julia.
I agree. Oh, wow. I thought we were going to disagree. Kevin, this is a moment of unity never seen before between the two of us. This is incredible. Yes, Die Hard is absolutely 150,000% a Christmas movie. I don't want to hear anything otherwise. There's Christmas trees. They're going to a Christmas party. There just happens to be a little action on the side. So we're not going to spoil it for you, Teagan, because you need to watch it and report back. But
Good.
Die Hard, absolutely a Christmas movie. I would love, if anybody disagrees, please at me online. I would love to have a conversation because this is something I'm
Julia's
very
ready to
passionate
fight
about.
today.
But I'm ready to fight. I'm just happy that we agreed, Kevin.
Yeah,
this is
conversation.
huge. Like, I feel like we've turned over a new leaf going into 2026. All right.
It's like
well,
our
here we
first
go.
agreement.
I know. I love it. Well, we're going to agree to wrap up the show. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.